Everyone's heard of gout. Gout is a common disease, and some people say you can't eat certain foods because it causes gout. Can you tell us more about it?
So when it comes to gout, a lot of people are getting gout. It's actually a really common disease. Gout is the most common form of inflammatory arthropathy in adults, which means just inflammatory disease of the joints. A lot of people with gout tend to suffer from hot, painful, and inflamed joints. Classically, it's always the big toe that's the first one to get all hot and painful. Now, gout is primarily caused by high levels of uric acid in the blood. Uric acid is produced when our body breaks down purines, substances found naturally in our bodies and in a lot of the foods that we eat. So for so for when it comes to gout, if you eat a lot of purines and you have a really high amount of uric acid in your body, what happens is that the uric acid will settle and it crystallizes, especially in the joints. And if you have these sharp crystals in your joints, it causes you a lot of inflammation. It causes you a lot of pain. But when it comes to healthy people who don't have gout, purines are not actually harmful. There's a lot of risk factors when it comes to gout. Unfortunately, being male is a risk factor. So, guys, you're out of luck. Genetics is another. Dehydration, having other diseases, for example, high blood pressure, diabetes, kidney disease, or metabolic syndrome. Some medications can increase the risk of gout, for example, diuretics. Being fat or having just bad habits, for example, a bad diet or drinking too much alcohol. Now, gout was historically known as a disease of nobles because in that time, only nobles could afford to eat the type of foods that were high in purines. They were the only ones who could afford to eat so much that they would get fat. But now, when we call it a rich man's disease, it has a different connotation. When it comes to gout sufferers should avoid certain types of food. For example, meat tends to be very high in purine. Organ meats as well, or seafoods also tend to be high in purine. So instead of food like venison, duck, or turkey, you should be eating things like chicken. Instead of tuna, scallops, anchovies, or sardines, you should have lobsters, crabs, shrimps, and oysters instead, all things which tend to be more expensive. Instead of beer or whiskey, have wine. Instead of organ meats like liver or kidney or fried foods, try to have grains, vegetables, fruits, soy, or cherries instead. So now, instead of only the nobles having gout, it's more of a now you want to have the money to be able to afford the healthy foods that will help you avoid gout.